listeners, welcome to the third episode of the Shire podcast, the Warhammer 40k podcast that focuses on the competitive side of the game from Bonnie, Scotland and further afield. Tonight we're employing our own hyper-adaption. As you may notice, it's of course me. The only good bug is a bug with a neutron blaster, Chris Jones, that is taking on hosting duties tonight, doing my best hosting impressions. We are, of course, joined by several Shire Knights. First up, we have, is that for Bone Sabers, or are you just happy to see me? Ryan Rybo-Kerr. Hello, Ryan.
Hello. How's it going?
Very well, thank you. Next up, we have the man that has bigger brain plays than a Maliceptor. Put the poor bug to shame. It is our own Alan.
Good evening.
There we go. And last but definitely not least, we have thawed him out of a glacier from a crag. We've got our very own Old One Eye. It's Mark Hutchin.
Hello, mate.
There we go. How are we all doing tonight, chaps?
Doing great,
Good,
yeah.
man.
I hope that was my best sort of witty Mark one-liners, getting out there, getting to the hosting seat and getting used to this, but hopefully foreshadowing what we're going to have a wee chat about tonight, which is, of course, the big bugs are back in town. Mostly slight changes from earlier this afternoon, but we're going to have a wee chat about the Tyranids Codex this evening, aren't we all?
Yay.
Yeah, the bug book that doesn't know what books are allowed and which books aren't until today. That's all
Until
changed.
today, indeed. I mean, I actually think we might cover off that first. So it's another week, it's another balanced data slate. We've had minor changes here and there, some bug-related, some not bug-related. Mark, do you want to walk us through the sort of non-bug-related changes that have come out today?
Well, one big change was that the Imperial Knights and Chaos Knights got what they asked for, which only makes sense, that they're getting their OBSEC back and the previous updates that they had in the balanced data slate. That was ridiculous that was taken out. So, brilliant news on that front.
Yeah, I don't think it really made all that much sense. Obviously, Knights Codex is on the horizon, but why take away OBSEC for what is everyone is assuming going to be maybe a couple of weeks?
Absolutely. There was a few other things with some of the other supplement books being updated to say that you can't use them, so no one has to carry around libraries anymore, pretty much, to play their games.
Yeah.
Admech theirs, which is good. Quite happy with Skitarii veteran cohort staying in the mix.
Mm-hmm. I was happy to see Cult of Strife is still staying as a viable book, but I suppose let's move on to the big change from the new data slate, or the new sort of book validity update or something like that they've called it in the download section of the Warcom website. Crusher Stampede, Hive Fleet Leviathan supplement, no longer valid either or. Ryan, big changes? Little changes?
Massive changes. I mean, everybody has said that that's what had to happen. So, yeah, everyone's I don't think there's one person that says that, that change is very unfair. Because if those changes were in place, they were broken. They were just, having any monster charge once, being able to just instantly do 9 mortal wounds, sometimes 12 mortal wounds, just for charging, not even doing the close combat attacks. Some would say that's a little bit broken. But just
sorry, go on, Ryan.
I was just going to say that just having that removed is it means that more focus is on the actual codex now, rather than exposing a hybrid kind of list between the new codex and older rules.
Yeah, I mean, I have to say, trying to guess what GW are intending to write their rules as is a fool's game, but it did feel like these came out, or maybe would have come out well before the Tyranids Codex, that they were always intended for the old Tyranids Codex, and we'll touch on the Codex later. It feels like a lot of the rules in there sort of are the same as some parts of Crusher Stampede. I don't think anyone's surprised. One thing I just wonder, and Alan, maybe it'd be interesting to get your point of view on this. So we've had the original balance data slate, that old one from last week now. It came out after sort of pressure from the community of 75% win rates from Harlequins. Quite, I think some people have talked about it coming out a month earlier than it should have. And then we had a lot of GTs and tournaments having decided that, do you know what, we're just not going to allow Crusher Stampede. They're sort of an old style comp that you haven't really seen in the competitive scene, at least on such a broad scale, for a while. Alan, are GW listening to players?
It could be for the first time. Possibly. But I suppose with them getting more involved in the tournament scene, the competitive scene, that could definitely be one of these things that's come from it. I think the other thing that probably put them under pressure was that obviously playtesters had leaked various things out from the book, and that could have put it more in contention. Obviously, with the recent books that have come out, it's always been a 4-week period before you get an FAQ where they try and sort things out. I think at this point it was evident that Crusher Stampede with the new book was just probably unbeatable, as Rybo said before there. You're smashing into something on the charge, doing 9 mortal wounds, and that's even before you start attacking. And then you can just disappear off the board. You're like, excuse me? What's happening here?
Wasn't it? It's another rock buggy list. It was something that people would put on the board. You'd smash into a bazillion mortal wounds. You'd do psychic powers, do a bazillion mortal wounds, shoot and do a bazillion mortal wounds, fight and do a bazillion mortal wounds. And before you know it, people just don't want to play against that list after even just seeing it the first time. So I think they've done what's only sensible and just can it.
Yeah, I mean, like I say, that there seemed to be a lot in the Tyranids Codex that we'll go on to that, mirrors what was in Crusher Stampede. But yeah, I mean, I think we're still of all the opinion that Nids are still going to be tough. They're still going to be strong, and perhaps that's a good time for us to segue onto the Tyranids Codex. I suppose initial thoughts, we'll go with Mark, just because all I've been seeing this week is green Tyranids coming on my Facebook chat.
Yeah, I'm doing a theme that looks more like a salad than a Warhammer army, but it looks pretty. It's green. It's really leafy green. Going for a jungle leafy green Tyranid thing. I think the Codex is fantastic. I've invested in a couple of different armies and codexes in 9th edition. Started with Death Guard, which I think is still a fantastically well written book. I won't get any disagreements from Alan on that one.
Definitely not. Definitely not.
I mean, we were talking about it earlier on today. That is great that Plague Marines are just back in the mix now, being really good. I think there's still opportunities for different army styles for Death Guard, which are great. Similar AdMech, you could write 3 different armies with that book. I think Tyranid is the first one. I genuinely believe, I think you could have 4 competitive different styles of list, whether you go psychic, melee, shooting, or combat. I think it's just fantastic. Or just do a utility, so you'd have 5.
Sounds very well rounded, and especially since probably comments at the start of this afternoon versus now probably have been slightly different since the data slate. Ryan, I know you're quite keen on Nids as well at the moment. I've been seeing lots of lovely black and yellow warriors on your streams recently. Your thoughts echo Mark's?
Yeah, no, definitely. There's so many different builds that you can do with the Nid Codex, and lots of tricks up its sleeves. I'd say my favourite unit out of the Codex, my fan favourite pick, would actually be something that I wasn't too... I didn't like the look at it at first, but it's grew on me, and I'm a big fan of the Parasite.
Yeah.
Especially with kind of Terminators cropping up, big units that are going to live for quite a while. If you can infect one of them, remove their obsec, and they stay infected, you're just getting free mortal wounds every turn, and potentially, a free Ripper Swarm every turn, because they'll chew through Terminators. Yeah. But you can't complain with free models.
No, definitely not. I'm having flashbacks to Gladius assault forces with 3 Razorbacks, but I suspect a Ripper is not quite as bad as that. But yeah, I mean, I suppose then makes sense to move on to, okay, I'm definitely the least knowledgeable at NIDS here, and that's totally not why I've been shoved in the whole seat for this evening. But what's the big thing about NIDS in this new book? We'll stick with you, Ryan, just for a second. Then what's army-wide rules? What's new for NIDS in 9th?
Yeah, so there's a few things that are new. So one of the key things that are awesome is the what is the synaptic imperative abilities. I had to try and remember the name of it there. So basically this I'm trying to think of an easy way to describe it. It's a bit like your doctrines for Space Marines. You have a doctrine every turn. But or maybe it's you could say it's similar to the tides for Grey Knights. You have these tides, and you pick which tide you're in each turn, but you can never pick the same one twice. Different. It's once again, it's these new codexes. They seem to be getting these. A new ability kind of every turn, or an overarching ability that can change. Every book in 9th seems to be getting this, and for this case, it depends on what synapse creatures you have. So, at the start of every turn, you pick your imperative ability. You can only pick an imperative ability once. You cannot pick the same one twice. So, if you pick the Tyranid Prime ability once, you cannot pick it turn 2, 3, 4, and 5. So these abilities are great as well. The one that I really like is the Zoanthrope's ability for warp shielding, which just gives all monsters a 4-up invuln save, and any other models a 5-up invuln save, as long as you've got the synapse creatures to help pass those buffs about.
And that must be quite big now. Like I say, especially this afternoon, we're not going to see army-wide 5-up invulnerables anymore because of no more Crusher Stampede.
Exactly.
That can only add. You must be seeing a Zoanthrope unit in every NID list going forward, just to be able to pop that, surely.
Quite likely just to add survivability to your big bugs now that Crusher's gone. You don't have the -1 damage, you don't have the 5-up invuln. Yeah, so that's Zoanthropes, and then you've got things like the Tyranid Primes, which is exploding 6s to hit for ranged attacks, I believe. Yeah. So, and then you've got Tyranid Warriors, which is 6s to hit explode for melee attacks.
Wow, even Warriors are getting in on the action sort of thing, and that pops out to everything that is in Synapse range, does it? You trigger it.
So it is the Synapse creature and one friendly Hive Tendril unit within 6 inches. That tends to be what it buffs. So it's one unit within 6 inches of Synapse. But if you run, say, like an army that has quite a lot of Tyranid Warrior units, you won't have an issue with Synapse creatures, because every unit is Zoanthropes, every unit of Warriors, Malceptors, all these great units. The Parasite, they're all Synapse creatures, so they get to they buff themselves with the imperative, and then a friendly unit within 6 inches of them. So every Synapse creature then picks one unit in their army. There's only going to be 1 or 2 units that aren't really getting the buff.
Yeah,
and those 1 or 2 units might not really matter that much.
Yeah, I remember the simple days when Synapse was just, you can use my leadership or you get a free pass morale. I presume that's still a thing, is it? They're still not too worried about leadership if they're within Synapse range?
Yeah, you just auto pass morale if you're, in Synapse range.
Nice. And Mark, we've touched a wee bit on looking at hive fleets again with the chat of Leviathan supplement. Are the leafy green Tyranids edging anywhere towards a particular hive fleet? Is there something out there that looks particularly good at the moment?
Well, yeah, I think the most common popular one will probably still be Leviathan. I think it gives so much that helps. I'm running a list that's got a lot of little bugs in it as well, I wasn't going to do Crusher, and those little bugs get a mini transhuman, which, as Rybo will tell you from his Gene Stealer cult army, it's absolutely massive in a lot of games. Quite frustrating for some people to play against as well, if they're not getting to wound on twos and what have you. So I still think Leviathan, with its transhuman for big bugs and normal mini transhuman for little bugs, is just too valuable to skip past. I think there's a few other good ones. I think you said earlier on, Chris, about, was it Behemoth? You said
just get stuck in all the strength, adrenal glands. That's what I want.
Yeah. And if you're running that type of list, there's definitely going to be a lot of play for that. And I think if you start those adaptions that we talked about, the synaptic imperatives earlier on, they're like home for me, because for AdMech, we get Doctrinas every round, and you pick it. And you have to be quite kind of careful and plan ahead with your game as to when you're going to have units in position to use certain buffs. And the synaptic imperatives are exactly the same. If you think you're going to have quite a few units in combat, you're going to want to have a combat orientated one, so you keep that till later on in the game. And I think if you combine that with certain hive fleets, then you've got a recipe for murder.
Gosh. It's definitely something to look forward to, and everything you're saying sounds like it'll still be still a super strong codex even without the supplements being available now. I suppose before going into maybe themes of armies, we'll have a wee focus on like particular units. Now, I heard that Hive Guard aren't something to worry about anymore. True or false?
Yeah, Hive Guard have taken quite a dive. So one of the key things that has changed with Hive Guard came in the balance data slate. You know, if you're shooting out of line of sight, you basically lose a -1 on their gun. And then if they're only AP -2 now for an Impaler cannon, so you're 3 shots, strength 6, AP -2 damage. So if you're shooting out of line of sight, sure, you ignore cover with it, but if you're shooting a Space Marine and you're out of line of sight, it's AP dash anyway, so it doesn't matter if they're getting cover or not. One of the big things as well is if they do want to shoot out of line of sight, they can only shoot out of line of sight to against a enemy unit that is visible to a synapse model.
Oh wow! So it's not even true out of line of sight shooting.
Yeah.
You still have to see it with something else in your army.
Exactly. Yes. So it makes it interesting. One thing is it's sorry, I've just realized something. They have, I don't know how that, it modifies the ballistic skill, correct? Shooting out of line of sight.
Yes,
as well. Synaptic guidance would ignore that.
Yeah.
Oh, interesting.
They ignore any hit roll or ballistic skill modifiers. So
but there would still be AP 0. So against Marines, that is, there'd be AP -1. I still don't think they're that great. Yeah, they've really just taken a dive.
My feelings from the chat that I've been like last few weeks, and definitely when we were pulling together fun ideas for lists, is so out of line of sight. I mean, there's nothing that stops the Space Marine or any army still getting that +1 to save, even if you don't have to worry about the ballistic skill modifier. But there's definitely stuff in the Tyranids Codex that is super strong at the moment. So maybe Hive Guard even just being like okay means you're just going to spend your points elsewhere at the moment.
Absolutely.
Who wants to talk about harpies at the moment?
Oh yeah, I love me a harpy. Yeah, there you go. What would you rather spend your 180 points on?
It's only 180 points.
Well, 3 Hive Guards 180 points, and a harpy 180 points. Well, in fact, sorry, I tell a lie. It's even cheaper. It's 170 if you give it 2 Venom Cannons. It's 160 with 2 Stranglethorn Cannons. But I would run them with 2 Venom Cannons. Harpies are absolutely brilliant. I expect to see 2 Harpies in most lists. they're crazy good. So one downside to them now is that they are now aircraft, so they cannot hold objectives. You can no longer make them obsec and fly them onto an objective. Although I think that was a Leviathan stratagem anyway, so you can't even use that anymore thanks to today's balance slate. But yeah, their ability, so they've got, a minimum move of 15, maximum move of 40 inches. This does bracket. They're at 13 wounds and toughness 7, -1 to hit because they're airborne. They're also maneuverable, a bit like the AdMech flyers, so you can turn them 90 degrees at the start of their move, and then at any point during their move, you can move them up to 90 degrees again. Meaning that you can make them move into the fight and kind of move over units that you want them to move over. You don't have to worry about positioning really as much as a normal flyer. And they have the benefit of when they do move over an enemy unit, you roll, if it's a vehicle, you roll 6 dice. If it's infantry, you roll 1 dice for each model. And then on a 4-up, it's a mortal wound. I believe it's to a maximum of 10d6 that you can roll as well. So,
so it's a fuselage. It's an Archaeopter fuselage.
Yeah, essentially, it's got a fuselage ability.
Yeah, and then you notice what guns it has.
Yeah,
which are
2 venom
cannons are shots at strength 9 -3/4 damage, which are better versions of the twin Cognis las cannons on the Stratoraptors. They've got the movement of the thing. We've got a new winner for best aircraft in the game.
Definitely. So, I mean, like, everything comes with it. I'm just having a wee look at the data slate just now. Like you say, maneuverability's there. It's -1 to hit. It can go 40 inches. It even, ballistic skill 3 up with 2 strength 9, heavy 3, so heavy 6 altogether. Turn 1 alpha strikes on the cards, chaps, by the sounds of it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
That is manky, to be honest, to put it lightly. And yeah, I'd be very surprised if you don't see at least a couple of those in every. Well, I suppose at most a couple of those in every list as well, being flyers. But yeah, that's pretty insane. And something else that again I've picked up from, and this is probably interesting considering some thoughts on where the meta is going, right? So feel like from the old balance data slate or the current balance data, I'm not even sure what stage we're at with these now, that obviously Grey Knights are in a good position. Thousand Suns in a good position, both got their armor of contempts and stuff like that. That's a lot of mortal wounds, but you chatted a wee bit about the potential for Crusher Stampede to do a lot of mortal wounds. There's the big brain bug here can do a hell of a lot of mortal wounds as well, isn't that right?
Yeah. There's many ways to do mortal wounds. Big brain bugs are definitely a way to do it.
Are you still going to see lots of them without the potential for Crusher Stampede protection?
Yeah, because they have a 4-up invuln anyway. It was mainly the -1 damage. The brain bugs are crazy good. I think in the list that in a NID list you will see a way to do mortal wounds in every single phase.
Not what I want to hear.
Which is quite wild, but the Malceptors are especially wild. So they specifically Leviathan Malceptors as well. It depends on how they're going to rule a specific synapse imperative.
Oh yeah,
to do with psychic action. So there's a synapse imperative that allows you to perform a psychic action without it hindering your psychic powers.
Okay.
So from the wording, it sounds like you can do a psychic action and your psychic powers. So does doing a psychic action take up one of your 2 psychic powers that you can perform, or is it additional? And
good question. No idea.
It's probably something that's going to need to get FAQ'd. And it's going to need to get FAQ'd because the Psychic Overload special rule for the Malceptor, which is every time you successfully complete a psychic action or a psychic test on a 7 or more, you pick the closest enemy unit within 12 inches and they suffer 3 mortal wounds. This degrades with how many wounds left a Malceptor has, but it begins on 3 wounds. It doesn't require line of sight, so the thing can be behind a wall and it's still just splashing you with mortal wounds. So,
I mean,
yeah, it's pretty good.
Yeah, I mean, go on, Alan, sorry?
Yeah, that's disgusting. It's almost like having a wee malignant playcaster that does 1 mortal wound within 12, but you could have 2 or 3 of these big bugs doing it.
Look, I think the crazy thing is it's just like you do a psychic power or a psychic action and it comes off. It's, you could be doing the most benign psychic power, some sort of buff that you're not going to use, and you automatically get a very good smite off, admittedly only 12-inch range, but it's like, oh, well, there you go. You've rolled a 3 on your D3 mortal wounds for smite in addition to what else you were doing.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's really strong, and it also helps that the Maleceptors themselves have a psychic action that they can perform. So their psychic action is aura of whenever a ranged attack hits a high fleet unit within 6 inches of this model, their weapons are -1 strength. So it's actually a really, really useful psychic action.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it just sounds like they can do quite a lot in that sort of thing. I'm even having a look at their massive scything talons, and so they're even decent in combat with that sort of thing. Like even if you have to tag them,
they can punch back. Yeah,
they can punch back, and obviously being in combat, as long as you don't fall back, doesn't stop you casting psychic powers now. So it's just slightly worrying, to be honest, to be frank. What you're going to do against something that's toughness 8 with a 4-up invulnerable and 15 odd wounds, and then you're, like you say, they're like 170 points. So is it all big bugs then? We've seen Crusher Stampede disappear, but Mark, you're talking about not running just big bugs. You're running little bugs.
Yeah. I still think there's a lot of play in the Tyranid little bugs. I mean, I'm used to using Rangers to get up to strength 4, just normal strength 4, AP -1 weapons with our rifles. Your normal little bugs, the shooty ones, have got strength 5 -1 on flesh borers, and they're cheaper. And they're a bit quicker, so they can get around the board. They're just better, to be honest.
Yeah.
You can bump up these things with different synaptic imperatives and give them a mini transhuman, and you start thinking that these little bugs have got fantastic value in comparison to some other armies. That you can't ignore things like Maleceptors. I'll be trying to get my hands on one as quickly as possible, because I mean they really are incredible. The way that they're written just now, they've got ridiculous amount of mortal wounds. I think you can get up to something like 2d3 plus 9 mortals plus whatever you get on the neuroparasites when you link them together and things, which is just crazy. So yeah, no, I'm going to try and play a lot. I think playing the mission as well. I think the little bugs just give you so much board control because you can swarm them out. The list I'm going to run tomorrow night's got 2 units of 20 Hormigants and 2 units of 20 Termagants in it, just to see how they play. So it's a lot of salad.
A lot of salad. Dear, it's not going to get old quickly at all. Alan, you're playing against Tyranids tomorrow night, is that right? Or is it Tyranid versus Tyranid off? What are you doing? What are your thoughts?
I am taking the beloved Death Guard still. I was all for jumping on Tyranids, but with the armour of contempt and being able to have OBSEC on Terminators, it's just brought me back again to Death.
You try to get away and they keep clawing you back in.
Try to get away, that way I was still using Volkites, and thought they were going to take core away from them and maybe bump up the points. They bumped up the points a wee bit, but then they took away points from the Plague Burst Crawlers, which helped differentiate the points out, which was quite nice. Obviously, this new data slate has made it a bit more difficult for the out of line of sight. I've definitely felt that in the past few playtesting games that I've tried them in, which just means maybe I have to play them a bit more aggressively than I'm used to, which has worked out not bad. Definitely tomorrow going up against Non-Crusher is going to be nice. I wasn't totally sold on the Harpies because I don't really like aircraft as much. However, you cannot deny their data sheet. It's just amazing. Like being able to drop mortal wounds and then shoot you.
It's just mad, isn't it? I mean, it's even just looking at like their minimum movement is 15. If you want to, they don't even have to go that far. You can get. Oh.
It's just, and then you're trying to shoot at them, and you can say, well, they don't have -1 damage, but they're still -1 to hit, and that does take when you start shooting at something and you don't get to it, and you're like, oh no, it's still there.
Well, you just think about like what Raibo was saying earlier. You pop that. Is it 4-up invulnerable for like a look? Would you be able to stick that on a Harpy?
You could, but you would have to be within 6 inches of Synapse range because Harpies are no longer Synapse. I believe the last edition they were Synapse, and lost it. But if you have a Flyerant that's going to be flying in, doing its damage, and then fucking off at the end of the turn, it'll most likely be in range of the Harpy.
That's one thing I was going to go on to was Hive Tyrants have always been very good. Well, maybe most of the time. And there has been chat online about yo-yoing Hive Tyrants, which I know we've chatted. Mark's brought up his ad mech, and it again flashbacks of what they call those guys with the flamers jumping in, flaming, jumping out, sort of thing. Is that still going to be a problem with Hive Tyrants? You're saying they can just jump out willy-nilly?
Yeah, so you can't take as many Hive Tyrants anymore. You're restricted to 1 Hive Tyrant per detachment, but there is a stratagem you can use for your Flyerants that you just put them into reserve at the end of the turn. That's it. Well, it's not just Hive Tyrants you can use it on. It's anything with the Burrower keyword or the Fly keyword. So if you really wanted your Harpies to survive, you could just put one of them into reserve at the end of the turn after they've done all their shooting. Which is another interesting play to make. So yeah, there's a lot of play with it. But you can make these big smashy Flyerants that either fly in and then use Encircle the Prey to basically run away.
Mm-hmm.
Or, I mean, they can just stand there and look real menacing.
Well, they do more than just look menacing, though, don't they? You've been telling me. And now, admittedly, we had this conversation last week, which was about multi-mortal wound Hive Tyrants. Can you still build a Hive Tyrant so it's terrifying as hell?
You can. It's just less terrifying now because it doesn't have the Crusher Stampede, psychic powers, warlord traits, and whatnot that gives it as many attacks.
So does it do a reasonable amount of mortal wounds rather than 12?
It does a reasonable amount of mortal wounds. You can still use a stratagem on the charge to do mortal wounds, and that'll do about 3 mortal wounds on average. It's on a 2 to 4, it's doing 3, and then on a 5 and a 6, it's doing 3 plus D3. A 1, it does nothing. So on average, about 3 mortal wounds on the charge. And then if you give it a relic, it for every successful wound is a mortal wound. So I don't think there's as many ways to get additional attacks. You can still use the psychic imperative for warriors to give it exploding 6s. So if you give it dual bone swords, that'll take it up to 6 attacks. And then for every 6 to hit is an additional hit, which works out on average to be 6 again, because you're hitting on 2s, 6 attacks. So you'll get 1 miss but 1 exploding on average. So 6 go through, your strength 10, however many wounds you get, do mortals. And then in addition, the saves that they fail from those attacks, because it's mortal wounds in addition, they do not get to use any feel no pains or any damage negation abilities. So things like Gazgul and Catans are not safe.
That's what I was going to say. That means even you can only do 3 wounds a phase sort of thing doesn't matter. Because you'll just you get to ignore that wound reduction. It's manky. I mean, it's
it's not as good, but it's still really good.
Yeah, it's still good. That is still good.
I mean, you're like, do you know what? I'm still really suffering here, and all I'm hearing is, so you get 6 of this, and then you get 6 of that, and that leads to another 6 of this, and I'm just like, or something like Alan said the other way, where you just need to keep rolling 6s, but you don't even need to roll 6s here. It's just 6s for days, by the sounds of all I'm taking in from this. Oh dear. I mean, we've chatted about decent data sheets. Decent's an understatement. Good data sheets in that book. We've chatted about good hive fleets, abilities, stratagems. We've touched on this, some mortal wounds. I think you'd mentioned in a previous podcast, Ryan, that stuff like is the something combined with the parasite to turn off obsec, or is that's just its ability, isn't it?
Sorry about that. My headset cut out there.
Oh, no worries.
Can you repeat?
Oh, I was just saying, so talking about stratagems.
Yes.
And we've talked about good data sheets. We're going to talk about good stratagems. You talked previously about the parasite, its ability to turn off things like obsec and stuff like that. That's just its ability, isn't it? Is there any similar strats or anything that stands out that combines well with that sort of tactic?
Funny you said that. Yes. I like your segue. Yeah, the parasite. So for those that don't know the parasite's ability, it is essentially an alien straight out of the Alien movies. It infects people, and those infected people, if they take enough damage, it'll turn into Ripper swarms, which is quite cool. So the way it works is each time an attack made by this weapon, it has a 1 attack barbed ovipositor, I believe it is a name. It gets 1 attack with this weapon at strength 6 AP -1 damage, and if it successfully wounds, it's not an unsaved wound. Just if the roll is a successful wound.
All right.
It's the unit suffers 1 mortal wound in addition to any damage that it does, and then that unit becomes infected. Which then means it loses obsec, and at the start of your opponent's next command phase, you have to roll a d6 for the infected unit. On a 1, 2, 3, they're no longer infected and suffer d3 mortal wounds. On a 4, 5, 6, they are still infected and suffer d3 mortal wounds. If a unit suffers 2 or more mortal wounds as a result of this ability, set up a new friendly Ripper Swarm unit of one single Ripper within 3 inches of that unit and not in engagement range. You don't have to pay reserve points for this, it just happens.
I mean, it's straight out of Alien, isn't it? It's the little bugs bursting out of the chest. Yeah.
It's great. I absolutely love it.
Point of view. Definitely good for the NID player, I'll give you that.
Yeah. So, there's that. And that is its ability, in combat. But there's a stratagem to do the same thing in the movement phase when, much like the Harpy, when you move over an enemy, you do the mortals, they become infected. they lose their obsec. They might lose it in their turn as well if they keep on rolling and they're still infected. It's really nice. It's nice mortal output. And if you remember from my last podcast, I says these parasites are not named characters. You can take multiple of them, so you can actually run 2 of them, and you can, bomb one up the board, infect a unit with the strat for moving over them, and then charge and infect another unit, and then the other one can kind of sit back, and then if the one that's already went up dies, you can just use the one that's hanging back to go and do the exact same thing again and remove obsec here and there and be a menace.
Yeah, wherever you want to, which is ridiculous, but there we go. That is only the parasite can do that. It's not anything that flies over. It's just got to be the parasite.
It's
that
the
flies
parasite.
over.
Yes, the parasite that flies over does that.
But like you say, you can run multiple ones of these,
and they've got a casual. No, they're 80 points, and they've got a casual 16-inch move. So,
just a casual one.
And they're not too bad in combat as well. They've got 6 attacks at strength 5, AP -2, 1 damage. So, and weapon skill 2 up. So not bad at all in combat. They can be quite a menace to some squishy units.
I was thinking it tends to be these lighter units people will leave on their backfield objectives to hold something, because I'm definitely not going to have to worry about indirect fire anymore, or at least as much, so I can leave my squishy Kroot at the back, or the good old servitor days where the servitors used to sit at the back, but now this guy can just fly up there and mince them, or worst comes to worst, turn off their obsec and stuff like that.
Yeah, exactly. And once again, Synapse creature, so... So like we say, having one hanging back is completely useless as well. It's passing buffs. It's giving the imperatives out. The one that does fly deep is giving your imperative the 4-up invuln imperative to your harpy, like we mentioned earlier. It's great.
So far I'm having 2 harpies, I'm having 3 malceptors, I'm having 2, maybe 3 of these guys. I'm getting as many hive tyrants as detachments allow, and occasionally I'm also having gargoyles or termagants with strength 5 flesh borders, -1 AP in there as well. Is the codex pointed quite well? Because that was one thing that made the Drukhari codex really quite strong, is that you could have units from across the board and you could have a lot of them before chapter approved. Is it like, from lists you guys have been writing, has it been looking like you're struggling to get everything you want in, or is it, I've got a few points to spare here?
I think it's very well pointed. In some cases potentially underpointed, but we'll see from competitive play in the coming weeks. But there's a lot of things in this book that, you get a good mix of everything. My go-to for lists is, like you say, is 2 harpies, 2 maleceptors, 2 parasites, a hive, a flyer-in, and yeah, the smaller units like your gaunts and gargoyles. Gargoyles are insane, as they are 8 points a model, a minimum score of 10, so you're 80 points for a unit of gargoyles.
Mm-hmm.
But they're troops and therefore obsec.
Did they used to be troops?
No, they used to be fast attack, and they have a 12-inch move.
Oh well, that's so they've moved to troops. They've gained obsec. They've gained strength 5 guns. I'm just looking it up now.
I'm going to fact check
points.
myself. Yes, I'm going to fact check myself to make sure they do have obsec in case the NID obsec specifies infantry.
I had a feeling.
Well, they are also infantry.
They are also infantry. That's true. Let's have a
well, it doesn't matter then. Yeah.
They've got to think. I think the thing that before the balanced data slate, you would have said probably gargoyles and termagants were undercosted with a strength 5 -1, 1 damage weapon. And that probably is the same. But if you've got power armor, you're just laughing at these now, which is crazy, because I think what we think the meta probably will change into is more Terminator lists or more things with 2+ saves that don't have storm shields.
Mm-hmm.
That's true. That is true, but I'm looking at them from more of objective perspective.
Yeah. No,
Things like
that does make
Rod,
sense.
you don't necessarily need to shoot them. Rod, behind enemy lines, there are troops, so anything's really possible with them.
Yeah, and a very cheap troop choice as well.
Exactly.
You know,
Yeah.
That's the main thing.
Well, yeah,
I would imagine.
8 points a model for a gargoyle, and it, like you say, it's a troop choice, so it gets all its buffs when doing secondary objectives that require normally a roll or something to do that. But you just need 5 gargoyle. Well, they come in squads of 10 to 20, but you only need 5 left to be able to do your rods and stuff like that, or planting bombs in certain missions and stuff like that.
Yeah. Even just to advance onto the opponent's objectives on their half of the board.
Exactly. If they've got OBSEC and they're 80 points for a squad of 10, that's 10 OBSEC bodies going 12 inches. I suspect, or I'd be very surprised if there isn't one of the high fleets or one of the stratagems that has an auto advance or some sort of buff to advancing, re-rolling advance rolls from one of the high fleet adaptations. And so just again, much like what Ryan's been talking about with the Parasite, just hurling these guys up the board if you need to, or hurling them across the board mid-game to go grab an objective that your opponent thought was safe, but these guys have just got the speed on them to get there. I suppose actually talking a wee bit about secondary game here, a lot of the good factions have had their own decent codex-specific secondaries. Are Tyranids the same? I honest to God, don't know anything about the secondaries in this book, and I'm sorry to throw it on you guys. I hope hopefully one of you's got the answer.
Yeah, so the secondaries are really, well, one of them specifically is really interesting because it's got something I haven't seen with any of the other secondaries in the game yet. So I'll cover that one first. The other ones are, I want to say, but so the purge the enemy cranial feasting is interesting because of it regens command points for you, which no other secondary in the game gives you command points.
Oh, so it's a bit like, I can see this now. It's the hive tendrils and stuff like that.
Yeah, so basically each time an enemy character model or a unit champion, so any character or sergeant in a unit, is destroyed by a melee attack from any hive tendril unit. Hive tendril is pretty much anything Nids besides, I think, things like swarm, like spore mines and things like that. They don't come under. In fact, I think some spore mines actually do. The Forge World ones do. Basically, yeah. I think even spore mines come under it. So yeah, any
meiotic spores have got hive tendril.
Yeah, so do normal spore mines. So yeah, basically hive tendril is just the name for nids. So any nid model, if you kill a character or a champion in combat, roll 1d6 and add 2 to the roll if the unit in question has the feeder tendrils keyword. So the Death Leaper, Gene Stealers, Lictors, Toxicreans, and Venom Thropes all have feeder tendrils. If you roll a 6 or a 4-up for feeder tendrils, you gain a command point to a maximum of 1 command point per battle round.
Mm-hmm. And this is a secondary. This is
a secondary
ability.
Yeah, this is an ability. This is a secondary mission.
So you get a free command reroll. I don't need to worry about any of my relics that I'm rolling 6+ every time you spend a command point, because that's actually just part of my mission now. What's the actual objective?
So you score 3 points if you gained a command point during the battle. So just if you rolled a 6 at any point when you killed a character or a sergeant, or a 4-up if you had feeder tendrils, you gain 3 points. And then you score 1 victory point for each character model and each enemy champion that was killed by melee by a hive tendril unit from your army. And then you score 3 points if the enemy warlord was destroyed by a melee attack from a hive tendril unit in your army.
So you're just getting for killing stuff, and you're getting command points on top of it. Is that right?
If an army has a lot of units with sergeants, I think that's really, really easy to max.
Yeah, definitely. I've never been so happy that Crutes don't have sergeants in their squads.
Yeah, but things that do have is Eldar, Harlequins.
Yeah.
Your Dark Eldar, they've all got their incubi. Space Marines, any Space Marine army. Chaos Marines. I don't think Necrons have any sergeants.
No.
Bring back the Necron meta.
Yeah, I've got a funny feeling there'll be no Necron players right now going, bring back the Necron.
I was thinking this was a stealth Necron buff here, that they don't suffer from one secondary in the new Tyranid Codex, isn't it? Yeah.
I mean, you wouldn't take it in a Nid mirror matchup. They don't have that.
No, but that, I mean, yeah, like you say, or we've been chatting about last podcast, obviously Imperial Guard potentially with all their sort of las guns of doom. Every single one of those squads has a sergeant in it as well, and they're
exactly
very easy to kill in combat. So, yeah.
It seems to me like it's a very, very easy way to get some scoring. It's great, to be honest.
Yeah.
That and the fact that it refunds CP, you don't have to waste a warlord trait giving a guy a CP refund kind of ability because it's just baked into your secondary now.
Yeah, like you say, it's not something I'm aware of from any other codex that you get a free ability when you choose this mission, which is quite cool. Bit odd, but quite cool. Yeah.
Yeah, it's great. The other two, like I say, they're not too great. You've got Shadow Operations, which is Spore Nodes. It reminds me a bit of like planting the bombs, but it's a secondary, so it's...
I mean, I love doing that. I just, I like the idea of Crute Hounds running out and planting bombs. It's just... I'll admit it's not the most competitive thing, but I just love that image. So what's different about this with planting bombs than...
So this is specifically troops units from your army. So one troop unit from your army can start to perform this action. At the end of the movement phase, from the second battle round onwards, if the unit is within 6 inches of your opponent's deployment zone and not within 6 inches of any spore node, which is what they put down, this action is completed at the end of your turn. If the action is completed successfully, place one objective marker anywhere wholly within your opponent's deployment zone and within an inch of the unit that completed this action. This objective marker represents a spore node, but does not count as an objective marker for any other purposes, blah, blah, blah. You get 4 points for each spore node. So if you plant one, for the 4 turns, because you can't plant it turn 1, you max it. If you get it for 3 turns, you get 12. 2 turns, you get 8. 1 turn, you get 4. So it's not bad.
But it's already in Shadow Operations, which there are some decent secondaries in there if you're not doing R&D or raising banners or something like that. I suppose you've got to contend it with what else could I take from that column.
It is essentially behind enemy lines, but you have to be careful what you're near. It's like a shit behind enemy lines. is my takeaway from it.
Not one you're looking to do then, you're thinking. You're going to stick to eating sergeant's brains.
No, because even if you wanted to take that, you would just take behind enemy lines, to be honest. Looking at it, I don't see the appeal of that over behind enemy lines.
Well,
but,
I mean...
Hey-ho.
No, go on, sorry.
No, I was just going to say, it's just, someone will take it. That doesn't realise behind enemy lines exist.
I mean, it's still the first one you're talking about where you're just killing sergeants, which again, situational, like you say, you don't want to do it against the Nid mirror match or all those Necron lists that we'll be seeing flooding the meta now. But, if you're against someone who's got multiple small units with sergeants in them, like you were saying, Harlequins, Eldar, that just seems I'm going to be killing you in combat usually anyway. Why not get some extra points for it? And it's definitely what helps these codexes get to obviously top tables is scoring points. And if you can make that as easy as possible with your codex specific one, then it's definitely not a bad choice, is it?
Yeah.
And in Purge the Enemy, not always an easy category to get a secondary in, because a lot of people will build lists to avoid giving up secondaries there.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Just quickly, see that last one you were talking about, Rival? The
Spore nodes.
Yeah, so is that shadow operations?
Yes.
So you could couple that with behind enemy lines.
Sorry, have I been saying behind enemy lines? The one where you do the action, the one that's in shadow operations.
Deploy
teleport hover. Sorry, yeah, I have been saying the wrong one. Yes, I apologize. Deploy teleport homers. So
that's quite alright. We're on a nid high at the moment.
My brain's all nids.
It's full of bugs. It's infested. What is it? The parasite does.
Yeah, exactly. We're parasitic infection. But for those that don't know, deploy teleport homers is a shadow operations. One infantry or biker unit can start to perform this action at the end of your movement phase. If they're a troop unit, it's completed at the end of your turn. If they're not, it's completed at the start of your next command phase. If you do it within your opponent's territory, but not within their deployment zone, it's 2 points. If you do it within their deployment zone, it's 4 points.
Mm-hmm.
Now that I've looked at that, is spore nodes restricted to once a turn? That would be the only benefit I see from it.
One troop unit from your army can start to perform this action at the end of your movement phase. From the second battle round onwards as well.
Yeah, I don't. I don't see
not
why.
for you.
Yeah, it's not for me. You know what? I'm out.
I mean, there's still plenty to go on from that book in general. Even with the long-awaited death of the Crusher Stampede, I suppose just as I see the time, let's start to wrap things up. Alan, you flirted with the idea of the Hive fleets, but you've not been taken in. Like I say, the manky hand of Nurgle keeps pulling you back. From what you've heard, from what you've read, from what these guys have scared us with, where do you think these guys are going to sit in the tables? They're going to be top tables?
Definitely. The Immortal wound output is amazing, along with either shooting or combat. You know, where you can easily combine both, and that for any army to deal with is difficult at the best of times. It's just the maneuverability they've got. They'll be everywhere. They can remove themselves from the table. It's just a very well-rounded book, and we'll just have to see how it goes. Tomorrow night's going to be some good fun, and at least now with Crusher being taken off the table, you know, there might be a chance for the Nurgle boys, but we'll find out.
I send you all my blessings there, Alan, for that one. And Ryan, you, like I say, I've witnessed you doing your sort of, I'm going to totally butcher the name of this Hive fleet. I know you're not playing them as this, but they're coloured black and yellow like Jorgmunder or something like that.
Yeah.
So you're looking to get an army of bugs out. Same question, going to be pushing the top tables, you think, this codex?
Oh, definitely. I think it'll be up there. It just depends on its popularity. You know, it'll hit the top tables if top players are going to be playing it. I definitely think it'll be up there and it'll be scary, and people are going to give it a bash, which is good. But also one of the most popular armies is Space Marines just now, so you might see a big rise in the Space Marine kind of meta. It's just how well does the NIDs push into the Space Marine meta, and how well do they perform against Terminator spam and whatnot.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's you know, I joke that we have a new balanced data slate every week, but it's definitely good that we're seeing changes. We're seeing GW reacting, and the meta isn't hopefully going to stay stagnant, and GW, at least if the last 2 weeks are to go by anything, being more reactive than they have for a long time. But I suppose we'll start to wind things up there. Obviously, thank you guys both for joining. Mark was here earlier. Mark's had to dash off as early as well, but thank you to him for taking part in this. I suppose we'll leave it there for tonight. But until next time, guys, all covered in bits of bugs and gribbly things. It's goodbye from me, and it's goodbye from the rest. Cheers, guys.
Yeah.
See ya.